You are exhausted. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind of tired that lives somewhere deep behind your eyes. The kind that follows you into the morning, sits beside you at your desk, and whispers in your ear at 2 a.m. when the rest of the world is quiet. You scroll. You compare. You perform. You hustle. And still, something feels missing. What if I told you that a man who ruled the most powerful empire in human history, a man with every luxury, every power, every temptation imaginable, felt exactly the same way you do right now? And what if that man left behind a private journal, not written for the public, not written to be remembered, but written as a desperate, honest reckoning with his own soul? That man was Marcus Aurelius. And his journal became one of the most important books ever written. This is not a history lesson. This is not a philosophy lecture. This is a mirror. Here's what nobody tells you about the modern world. It is the most comfortable era in all of human history, and somehow, we are more anxious than ever. Think about it. You have access to more food than any king in the ancient world. You carry in your pocket a device that connects you instantly to 7 billion people. You can learn anything, watch anything, and become anything. And yet, you wake up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing for no reason you can name. You open Instagram and feel a hollow ache when you see someone else's vacation, someone else's success, someone else's life. You sit in a meeting, nodding your head, and think, is this it? Is this what I'm here for? You set goals and abandon them. You make plans and break them. You tell yourself this year will be different, and then December arrives, and you're standing in the same spot, with the same weight on your chest, whispering the same tired question into the dark. What is wrong with me? Nothing. Absolutely nothing is wrong with you. What's wrong is that nobody ever taught you how to think, how to suffer, how to lose, how to live. That is what Stoicism does. And that is what Marcus Aurelius mastered, not once, in a moment of clarity, but daily, painfully, imperfectly, just like you. These are 10 of his most powerful lessons. And today, they are yours. Lesson 1: You cannot control the storm, only your sails. The foundational principle of Stoicism, the one everything else is built on, is this: there are things within your control, and things that are not. Most human suffering comes from confusing the two. Your body will get sick. People will leave. Markets will crash. Storms will come. This is not pessimism. This is physics. The universe does not negotiate. But your response? Your interpretation? The story you tell yourself about what happened? That is entirely, completely, unshakably yours. I will tell you story of Priya. 29 years old. Senior marketing manager at a tech company in San Francisco. She had spent 4 years building her career, her reputation, her identity, and then, on a Tuesday morning in October, her manager called her into a glass-walled conference room and told her the role was being eliminated. She walked out of that building in a daze. She sat in her car in the parking garage for 45 minutes, staring at nothing. The tears didn't come right away. What came first was the inventory, the silent, brutal audit of everything she had sacrificed. The weekends she'd missed. The relationship she'd let drift. The vacations she'd postponed. All for a title on a LinkedIn profile that now meant nothing. For the next 2 weeks, Priya did what most of us do. She spiraled. She refreshed her email constantly. She obsessively checked who was still employed at the company. She replayed conversations, looking for the moment she could have changed the outcome. She asked herself 1,000 times, what did I do wrong? But eventually, slowly, a different question began to form. Not what did I do wrong? But what do I do now? That shift, from backward to forward, from unchangeable to actionable, is exactly what Marcus Aurelius practiced every single day. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wrote that the obstacle is not the problem. The obstacle is the path. The thing you cannot control is simply the terrain. What matters is how you choose to walk through it. We live in a culture addicted to outcomes. We measure ourselves by results that are only partly in our control. The job you didn't get. The relationship that ended. The body that won't cooperate. The algorithm that buried your content. Stoicism doesn't tell you to stop caring. It tells you to stop suffering over what was never yours to control in the first place. Tonight, take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left, write everything that's currently stressing you out. On the right, for each item, write, "Is this within my control, or outside it?" For everything on the outside column, write one word, "Release." For everything on the inside column, write one action you can take tomorrow morning. That piece of paper is your first Stoic exercise. And it will change how you see your life. Lesson 2. The quality of your thoughts is the quality of your life. Marcus Aurelius believed something radical, that the mind doesn't simply experience reality. It creates it. The way you interpret events, the language you use to describe your circumstances, the narrative you construct about who you are, these aren't just thoughts. They are architecture. They build the house you live in. I will tell you story of Derek, a high school football coach in a mid-sized town in Ohio. For years, he had a quiet story playing in the background of his life: "I'm just a small-town guy. This is as good as it gets." He wasn't miserable, but he wasn't alive either. He existed in a gray zone of mild dissatisfaction, convincing himself that contentment and resignation were the same thing. Then his father died. At the funeral, one of his father's old colleagues pulled him aside and said something that broke him open. He said, "Your dad always told people you were the smartest person he'd ever met. He said you were meant for something big. He just never told you, because he didn't want to pressure you." Derek drove home in silence. He sat in his driveway for an hour. He realized, with a clarity that felt like being struck by lightning, that the story he'd been telling himself for 20 years had been a choice. Not a truth. Not a fact. A choice. A slow, daily, unconscious decision to see himself as smaller than he was. He spent the next 3 years building an online coaching platform. It now reaches over 50,000 athletes. He tells his players, every single practice, "The game starts in here." He points to his head. "Always in here first." Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." He understood that the Emperor of Rome was still just a man, and a man is only as powerful as the stories he tells himself in the dark. Cognitive science now confirms what Marcus understood intuitively: the brain is a prediction machine. It doesn't objectively record reality. It interprets it through the lens of your beliefs, your fears, your prior experiences. Change the lens, and the image changes. You are not your circumstances. You are your interpretation of your circumstances. That distinction is everything. For the next 7 days, every time a negative thought arrives, write it down exactly as it came. Then, below it, write, "Is this a fact or a story?" Then rewrite it, not with toxic positivity, but with honest nuance. Not, "I'm a failure." But, "I tried something hard and it didn't work." That means I'm someone who attempts difficult things. Small rewrites. Every day. The architecture shifts slowly. And then, one morning, you wake up in a different house. Lesson 3. memento mori, remember that you will die. This sounds dark. I promise you, it isn't. The Stoics kept death close, not to be morbid, but to be awake. When you truly absorb the fact that your time is finite, something extraordinary happens. The trivial becomes trivial. The meaningful becomes luminous. You stop wasting Tuesday. I will tell you story of Camille, a 34-year-old attorney in Atlanta. She was brilliant, disciplined, relentlessly ambitious. She worked 70 hours a week and told herself it was temporary, just until she made partner. Then she'd slow down. Then she'd call her mother more. Then she'd take that trip to Portugal she'd been planning since college. Then she got the diagnosis. Hodgkin's lymphoma. Stage 2. Highly treatable, her oncologist said. But the word cancer has a way of rearranging your entire interior world in about 30 seconds. Sitting in that doctor's office, she had a thought so clear it was almost loud: I have been postponing my actual life. She didn't quit her job. She didn't abandon her ambitions. But she called her mother that night, the first real conversation they'd had in months. She booked Portugal for the following spring. She started leaving the office at 6 on Fridays. She told me later, the cancer didn't take anything from me. It gave me back myself. She made partner 2 years later. And she celebrated in Lisbon. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." He meditated on death not as a punishment, but as a teacher. He understood that urgency is not anxiety, it is clarity. And clarity is the greatest gift. We live in a culture of infinite deferral. There will be time. I'll do it later. When things settle down. When I'm ready. But the clock doesn't pause for readiness. It never has. Memento mori is not a threat. It is an invitation. An invitation to stop rehearsing your life and start living it. Write your own obituary. Not the tragic version, the ideal version. What do you want to be remembered for? Who were you to the people who loved you? What did you build? What did you risk? What did you give? Read it back to yourself slowly. Then ask, am I living in the direction of that person? If the answer is no, you now know exactly what to change. Lesson 4. Stop performing. Start being. Marcus Aurelius had something to say about people who lived for applause. He called it one of the great traps of the human mind, the desperate need to be seen, validated, and admired. He noticed it in others. He battled it in himself. And he recognized it for what it was, a slow surrender of your authentic self to the expectations of people who don't truly know you. I will tell you story of Nathaniel, who had built his personal brand like a cathedral. Every post calculated. Every caption engineered. He had 200,000 followers who believed he lived a life of disciplined excellence, cold plunges at 5 a.m., meditation at dawn, stoic quotes over sunrise photos, perfectly curated productivity routines. In reality, he was drowning. Behind the content calendar was a man who hadn't slept properly in 8 months. Who sat in his apartment some nights eating cereal for dinner while his phone filled with comments calling him an inspiration. Who had begun to feel like a stranger to himself, performing a version of who he thought people wanted him to be, until he could no longer remember who he actually was. The breaking point came on a Sunday. He posted a picture, beautiful light, perfect angle, motivational caption, and thought, I feel nothing. Not pride. Not joy. Not even satisfaction. Nothing. He went dark for 30 days. No posts. No stories. No engagement. In those 30 days, he did the quietest, most terrifying thing he'd ever done. He sat with himself. Not the curated self. The real one. The one with doubts and contradictions and a childhood he hadn't dealt with and a dream he'd traded for metrics. When he came back, everything he posted was different. Raw. Honest. Imperfect. His follower count dropped by 40,000. And for the first time in years, he felt free. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." He distrusted reputation because he understood that reputation is what others think of you, while character is what you are when no one is watching. He cared deeply about the second one. He was largely indifferent to the first. Social media has industrialized performance. We have built entire platforms dedicated to the management of impressions. And the cost is something we rarely name directly: we are losing the ability to know ourselves. When you are always performing, you never arrive. There is no destination, only the endless stage. And the audience that seems to love you cannot actually see you, because what they love is the mask. Spend one full day this week doing things purely for yourself, with no intention of posting, sharing, or telling anyone. Cook a meal. Take a walk. Read a book. Sit in silence. Notice what it feels like to live without an audience. That feeling, that quiet, uncurated aliveness, is who you actually are. Start from there. Lesson 5. Your anger is a torch in a paper house. Marcus Aurelius had perhaps the greatest reason in history to be angry. People plotted against him. Generals betrayed him. His co-emperor Lucius Verus was reckless and undisciplined. His own advisors sometimes undermined him. And yet, the Meditations contain almost no rage, only clear-eyed analysis of human weakness, including his own. He understood something neuroscience is only now confirming: anger feels powerful, but it is actually the moment we are most controlled. Not by the situation, but by our reaction to it. I will tell you story of John, who had been working in construction company for 11 years. He was good at it, honest, reliable, and respected. His foreman, a man named Ray, had taken credit for John's project idea in front of the entire crew and the site owner. The idea had saved the company $80,000. Ray got a bonus. John got nothing. The anger that rose in John's chest was elemental. That evening, he sat in his truck for 20 minutes, rehearsing exactly what he was going to say the next morning. He was going to be devastating. He was going to make sure everyone knew. Then his daughter called. She'd won a spelling bee at school. She was so proud, she could barely form the words. And for a moment, the anger went quiet. He thought, if I go in there tomorrow and explode, I might feel righteous for 10 minutes. And then what? I still don't have the credit. I probably lose the job. My daughter's tuition doesn't get paid. All I'll have is a moment of satisfaction wrapped inside a month of consequences. He went in the next morning and spoke to Ray privately, calmly, clearly. He documented his contributions going forward. 6 months later, Ray was let go. John was promoted. He didn't win because he was passive. He won because he was patient. He chose power over theater. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of it." He believed that the man who cannot control his anger has already lost, regardless of whether he wins the argument. In an age of outrage culture, anger has become currency. Rage gets clicks. Conflict gets views. Being offended is practically a personality trait. But John would see this clearly for what it is: mass self-destruction dressed as virtue. You are allowed to feel angry. It is human. But you are not required to be ruled by it. There is a gap between stimulus and response, and in that gap lives your freedom. The next time you feel anger rising, implement what I call the 90-second rule. Neurologically, the physical sensation of an emotion lasts about 90 seconds when you don't feed it with thought. Just breathe. Let the wave pass. Then ask, what outcome do I actually want? And what response serves that outcome? Power is patient. React less. Respond more. Lesson 6. You are not your failures, you are what you do next. The Stoics had a concept called amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance. Not resigned submission. But an active, fierce embrace of everything that happens, including failure, loss, and humiliation, as necessary material for growth. Marcus Aurelius failed. Often. He lost battles. He made political miscalculations. He trusted people he shouldn't have. He wrote about these failures with a level of self-awareness that is, frankly, shocking for a man with absolute power. He did not perform self-flagellation. He did not drown in shame. He examined, adjusted, and returned. I will tell you story of Simone who had launched her bakery with everything she had. Her savings, her parents' loan, 3 years of nights and weekends perfecting her recipes. 6 months after opening, the location failed. Not because her food wasn't extraordinary, it was. But the foot traffic never materialized, the rent was unsustainable, and she had to close. She sat in the empty shop the last night, surrounded by shelves she'd built herself, and she felt something collapse inside her. Not just the business. Her identity. She had been the woman who was going to make it. And now she was just the woman who hadn't. For 4 months, she barely left her apartment. She couldn't enter a grocery store without smelling bread and feeling sick. But slowly, the way light enters a room when you aren't watching, something else began. She started writing down everything she'd learned. The supplier relationships that actually worked. The product lines that sold. The customer feedback she'd collected but never had time to act on. She noticed that her failure had been in execution, not in product. She rebuilt. This time, online first. A small commercial kitchen. Local delivery. Direct to customer. Within 18 months, she had a waiting list. She told me, that closed bakery was the most expensive education I ever got. And the most valuable. Marcus Aurelius quote that, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He saw failure not as a verdict on your character, but as data. Information. A teacher in disguise. We live in a culture obsessed with success stories, but deeply ashamed of failure. We hide it. We reframe it. We wait until we've recovered before we admit it happened. But this creates a false map of reality for everyone watching, and it robs you of the real gift of failure, which is the unfiltered truth about where your strategy went wrong. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the road to it. Take your biggest recent failure. Write 3 things it taught you that success never could have. Then write 1 specific, concrete action you can take this week that only became possible because of what you now know. Failures are not full stops. They are commas. The sentence continues. Lesson 7. Serve something larger than yourself. Marcus Aurelius believed that human beings are fundamentally social creatures, that we are designed not for isolation and self-service, but for contribution and community. He returned to this idea obsessively in meditations, almost as if he had to keep reminding himself of it. He wrote that a man who lives only for himself is like a branch cut from the tree. He may still exist for a while. But he is no longer truly alive. I will tell you story of James who retired at 58 from a logistics company where he'd spent 31 years. He'd been looking forward to it, the golf, the travel, the freedom. For the first 6 months, it was everything he'd imagined. Then the silence arrived. Not the peaceful kind. The hollow kind. The kind that makes you realize your entire sense of identity was tied to a role that no longer exists. He had been a manager, a provider, a man with a purpose. Now he was just a man with a tea time. His daughter suggested he volunteer at a literacy program for adult learners. He almost didn't go. He had no idea what he'd say to a room full of adults who couldn't read. He went anyway. The first student he was paired with was a 62-year-old man named Earl. Former factory worker. Embarrassed, frightened, furious at himself for needing help. James saw himself in Earl's pride, the same pride that had made James afraid to ask for directions, to admit uncertainty, to appear weak. Over the next year, Earl learned to read. He sent his grandchildren letters for the first time. He read a bedtime story to his granddaughter and cried through the whole thing. James told me, "I thought retirement was about what I got to stop doing. I had no idea it was about what I finally got to start." He still volunteers. Every Tuesday. Without fail. It is, he says, the most important thing in his week. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "What injures the hive injures the bee." We are all part of the one great living organism. He governed with this in mind. He saw his role as emperor not as a privilege, but as a service. As an obligation to something larger than his own comfort or legacy. The loneliness epidemic in America is real and it is worsening. Studies show that more people feel profoundly isolated today than at any point in recorded history, despite being more connected online than ever. The Stoic answer to loneliness is not companionship, it is purpose. When you are genuinely serving something beyond yourself, you are never truly alone. You are part of something. And that belonging is deeper than any follower count. This week, do one thing for someone else that requires your actual time and attention, not a donation, not a share, not a like. Your presence. A phone call to someone who's struggling. A meal delivered to a neighbor. A skill taught to someone who needs it. Notice how you feel afterward. That feeling, that quiet, specific satisfaction, is what Marcus Aurelius called living according to your nature. It is, perhaps, the closest thing to happiness that actually lasts. Lesson 8: The present moment is the only home you will ever have. Marcus Aurelius was fascinated by time, specifically, by how completely human beings mismanage it. We spend enormous energy grieving a past we cannot change and dreading a future we cannot predict, while the present moment, the only place where life actually occurs, slips away unnoticed, unappreciated, unlived. He wrote that a man who lives in the past is already dead. And a man who lives only in the future has never truly been born. I will tell you story of Rachel, a graduate student in neuroscience. Brilliant, driven, consumed. She was also living simultaneously in 3 different time zones of the mind, endlessly replaying a toxic relationship that had ended 2 years prior, obsessively planning the career trajectory she wanted in 5 years, and completely, utterly absent from the life happening in front of her. She told me she had a habit of being somewhere and not being there at all. At dinner with friends, she was in her head. At conferences, she was rehearsing her future. At home, she was excavating her past. One afternoon, she was walking across campus and a thunderstorm rolled in without warning. Within seconds she was soaked, laughing despite herself, running toward the nearest building. A stranger held the door open, and they stood together watching the rain, dripping and ridiculous, strangers suddenly bonded by shared absurdity. She said it was the most present she'd felt in 2 years. That evening, she asked herself, what if this, right now, just this, was enough? Not as a destination I'm working toward. Not as something I'm recovering from. Just this, exactly as it is. She began meditating the next morning. Not for productivity. Not for optimization. But for the simple, radical practice of being where she was. Her dissertation, ironically, was completed in record time. Because she was finally working instead of worrying about the work. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "Confine yourself to the present. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He understood that most of our suffering is not about what is happening, it is about what we are thinking about while things are happening. The mind wanders. The suffering follows. The practice is to return. We live in a notification culture. Every 7 minutes, something pings, dings, or vibrates for your attention. We have engineered an environment perfectly designed to prevent presence. And the cost is incalculable, because a life lived without presence is a life only partially experienced. The present moment is not a productivity hack. It is the address of your life. Choose one meal this week to eat without your phone, without screens, without a podcast. Just food, and silence, and the experience of tasting what you're eating. See how long you can stay there before the mind pulls you away. When it does, just return. Without judgment. Without frustration. That return. That simple act of coming back. That is the practice. That is the whole thing. Lesson 9. Choose your inner circle with the same care you choose your values. Marcus Aurelius was deeply concerned with the quality of company he kept, and he wrote about this with unusual directness for a man whose social circle was essentially mandatory. He recognized that the people around us are not neutral influences. They are gravitational forces. They pull us toward who they are. Spend enough time with people who are cynical, and cynicism begins to feel like wisdom. Spend enough time with people who are small, and your ambitions begin to feel embarrassing. The Stoics understood this with perfect clarity. Character is contagious. I will tell you story of Daniel. For 6 years, he had been part of the same friend group from college. 5 guys who had stayed close, weekly group chats, annual camping trip, the works. He loved them. They were his people. But somewhere around his late 20s, he began to notice a pattern. Every conversation circled back to complaining. About bosses. About women. About how the system was rigged. About how nothing ever worked out. There was a comfort in the shared cynicism, a warmth in the mutual lowering of expectations. Daniel had started a small business. He never mentioned it to the group. He was afraid of what they'd say. He already knew, he'd seen them dissect and dismantle every ambitious idea anyone in the group had ever floated. The crabs in a bucket, pulling each other down. He didn't abandon his friends. But he started deliberately seeking out different conversations. He found a local entrepreneurship meetup. He started a book club with co-workers who were builders and thinkers. He began spending more time with people who were doing things, rather than explaining why things couldn't be done. A year later, his business had its first profitable month. He celebrated alone on his apartment roof with a bottle of beer and a sky full of stars. And he felt something he hadn't felt in years: permission. Permission to want what he wanted. Permission to become who he was trying to become. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, "Associate with people who are likely to make you better. Welcome those who are capable of improving you. Those who improve you and those you improve, such relationships are mutual." He understood the emperor's dilemma: you cannot always choose who surrounds you. But you can choose who you give your inner world to. You are, to a significant degree, the average of the 5 conversations you have most frequently. Not just people, conversations. The podcasts you listen to. The social media feeds you scroll. The group chats you participate in. What is the quality of thought in your daily environment? Is it expanding you or contracting you? Is it feeding ambition or feeding fear? Audit your 5 closest relationships this week, not to judge the people, but to assess the direction of energy. Ask honestly, after spending time with this person, do I feel more like who I want to be, or less? You don't have to cut anyone out. But you do have to be intentional. Invest more time in relationships that elevate. Create gentle distance from those that diminish. Your inner circle is not your past. It is your future. Lesson 10, you are enough, and you always were. This is the lesson Marcus Aurelius returns to most consistently, most urgently, most personally across the pages of Meditations. He was emperor of Rome, and still he had to remind himself, again and again, you have what you need. Right now. In this moment. You are sufficient. Not perfect. Not finished. Not without flaw. But sufficient. Capable. Worthy of the life you are living. He understood that the deepest form of poverty is not material. It is the unshakable belief that you are fundamentally incomplete, that somewhere, somehow, you are not quite enough. I will tell you story of Sophia. 32 years old. A first-generation college graduate, a daughter of immigrants, a woman who had clawed her way into a competitive law firm through sheer, relentless work. By every external measure, she had made it. And yet she lived in a state of permanent arrival anxiety. She was always one performance review away from the belief that she belonged there. Always one mistake away from being found out. The imposter syndrome was so complete, so pervasive, that she had developed an almost athletic ability to dismiss her own accomplishments, to attribute every success to luck, timing, or some oversight by the people who should have seen through her. One evening, she was reviewing depositions late in the office when a junior associate knocked on her door. 23 years old. First year out of law school. Terrified, clearly. He asked if she could look at something he'd written. She read it. It was good. Genuinely good. She told him so. She watched his face transform, the exact same transformation she felt when she received rare praise from a partner. The relief. The almost physical release of tension. She sat alone afterward and thought, he sees himself the way I see myself. And I can see clearly that he is wrong about himself. I wonder if the partners can see clearly that I am wrong about myself, too. It was the beginning of something. Not a cure, it is never that simple. But a crack in the glass. A small, persistent light. She started writing a list, not of goals, but of evidence. Evidence that she was competent. Evidence that she belonged. Evidence that the fear was lying to her. She reads it when the imposter returns. And slowly, slowly, she is beginning to believe what was true all along. Marcus Aurelius quoted that, receive without pride, relinquish without struggle. And above all, know this, you are, by nature, equipped for the life you are living. He wrote to himself, the most powerful man in the world, as if he needed constant reassurance of his own worth. Not because he was weak, but because self-doubt is part of being human. Even for emperors. We live in a comparison economy. Social media has made it possible to measure yourself against every human being on Earth, simultaneously, in real time, on a platform specifically designed to show you everyone's highlight reel and hide their bloopers. This is not a fair fight. And you are not losing it, because there is nothing to lose. You are not in competition with the curated lives of strangers. You are on your own path, moving at your own pace, building something that is yours and no one else's. Enough is not a destination. It is a practice. A daily decision to stop measuring your inside against everyone else's outside. For the next 30 days, start each morning by writing 3 sentences beginning with the words, I am proud of myself for. Not big things. Small things. Real things. Yesterday's email you sent with courage. The conversation you had honestly. The choice you made that cost you something. Pride in yourself is not arrogance. It is evidence. And evidence, accumulated over time, builds something no external validation ever can, a quiet, unshakable knowledge of your own worth. Let me bring you back to that quiet room in ancient Rome. A man sits alone with a candle and a stylus. Outside, an empire breathes and turns in its sleep. There are wars being planned, plots being hatched, decisions that will shape the lives of millions waiting for him in the morning. And yet, here he sits. Talking to himself. Reminding himself. You cannot control the storm. Only your sails. Your thoughts are your life. You will die. So live. Stop performing. Anger destroys the vessel that carries it. Failure is the path, not a detour from it. Serve something larger. Be here. Now. Only now. Choose who shapes you. You are enough. He wrote these things not because he had mastered them. He wrote them because he kept forgetting. Because being human means forgetting. It means sliding back into fear, into ego, into smallness. The Stoic practice is not the absence of struggle. It is the daily return. Return to clarity. Return to purpose. Return to the person you know, in your deepest self, you are capable of being. Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD on a military campaign in what is now Vienna. He was 58 years old. He had ruled Rome for 19 years through wars, plagues, betrayals, and tragedies no person should have to bear alone. And yet, he endured. Not because he was made of different material than you, but because he chose, every single day, in that private journal, in those raw and honest pages, to be awake. To be intentional. To be worthy of the life he had been given. You have been given a life. Not the life you planned, maybe. Not the life you thought you deserved. But a life. Unrepeatable. Irreplaceable. Yours. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, philosopher king, most powerful man in the ancient world, sat alone in a tent and told himself the same things you needed to hear today. That means something. It means the struggle is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are human. It is a sign that you are trying. And trying, imperfectly, repeatedly, stubbornly trying, is the whole game. Marcus Aurelius quoted in his Meditations journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Now close this video. Not to escape it, to apply it. Pick one lesson. Just one. The one that hit the hardest. The one that felt like it was written specifically for you. Take it into your day. Your week. Your life. Because the ancient world knew something we are still learning. The unexamined life is not worth living. But the examined life, the one you choose with open eyes and an honest heart, that life is worth everything. You are enough. You always were. Now go prove it to yourself. If even one of these lessons stayed with you, then this wasn't just a video, it was a turning point. Subscribe for more ideas that sharpen your mind and steady your life. And before you go, comment the one lesson that hit you the hardest.